Guys, welcome to the new episode of the First Responder Playbook. It is my pleasure to welcome Doug Fifer, who is a retired Alaskan police officer who specializes in crime scene analysis, deviant sexual crimes, hostage negotiations, and various special assignments throughout his 25-year career. He started in law enforcement with the Anchorage Police Department in 1996 and retired in 2021. As a highly decorated investigator, Doug has negotiated with serial killers, solved homicides, and worked real life cases that will shock you to your core. Doug is a native of Alaska and a native citizen. Doug, thanks for joining me tonight, and I'm really excited to talk about your book you wrote.
Brent, appreciate you having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, how did you get into the lovely world of police work?
Boy, I think if you go back as a young, you know, person, early 20s, you got to find that career. You want to do something that's fun, exciting. Alaska, we're pretty big on outdoors, hunting, fishing, any activities. So I wanted something that wasn't like a 9 to 5 office job. So I thought about law enforcement. I thought about it as a kid, and I was like, I'm going to pursue that. So in '96, I put in for the agencies, the Anchorage Police Department and the Alaska State Troopers. I was hired by both in the same week. The Anchorage Police Department called me a few days earlier, so I accepted with them and then served my 25-year career in Anchorage.
So you eventually get into more specialized stuff, but what is your favorite story that you can tell me from your patrol days?
Gosh, there's so many, and policing has changed a bunch nowadays, right? With body cams, and it's all good. I think we should have it, but I think back in the original patrol days, like the old school cops, we used a lot of humor, a lot of dark humor. We did our jobs, we had fun, but with the community, we brought some of that humor with them. I think that's been lost a lot lately. So, not a specific story, but I think we really had great humor with the public, right? Back and forth. And so law enforcement is a very serious job at times, but at other times it's not. It's very chill. We work with the community, store owners, homeowners, citizens. So I love relating like that, like just a regular person. Some of that art is lost nowadays because of all the policing standards, things like that. But I wish we'd go back a little bit. We were more community based, talking with the public. A lot of fun stories, but a lot of good interactions with citizens.
For sure. So you do your time in patrol. Why did you decide now's the time to go to investigations, and what was that process like?
Well, I did a long time in patrol. I love the adrenaline rush of being a beat cop. You're out there. That radio goes off or that alert tone in an emergency. You get to respond. There's not a better adrenaline rush for a cop. I mean, that's kind of it. So I did field training for a long time on patrol as well. And for your listeners, you know what that is. But it's you bring a recruit on and they got to ride with the senior FTO for a month or so and kind of learn the ropes. And then you sign them off if they can hack it or you don't. Police work isn't for anybody, for everybody. But I think we did our best to train those new recruits up and get them where they could work alone on the streets. So I did that for a long time. What's unique about the Anchorage Police Department is you can join specialty teams. And that was really my favorite thing to do. So I worked crime scene response team for a while. That's a team that responds to any fatalities, murders, suspicious cases, missing persons. And we forensically map out those crime scenes. Just like you watch CSI, those are actual cops in the field that document every piece of evidence. Those crime scenes could take 48 hours straight of working. So I enjoyed that, but after about 4 or 5 years of doing that, I was exhausted, and I joke with my wife that all I see is dead people. That gets old after a while because that's all you respond to. But that was a great learning experience for me. So I did a lot of different teams like that, but hostage negotiations was really my sweet spot. I found that about 10 years into my career. I became a team leader of our team, and that's where I stayed for the majority of my career as a specialty unit. I love that. You respond to any type of barricaded subjects, domestic violence, obviously homicides where one person's been killed and they have other hostages. So I did that for a long time, and really that's what I was naturally the best at. I think cops all have an area that they specialize in, and that was really mine. I have the gift of gab. I get along well with people. So I was able to relate with those criminals in those specific instances, get some rapport built, and get them out safely. Not always, but most of the time.
Yeah, so I actually went through level one hostage negotiations certification. Gosh, probably March of this year, and there was actually a couple of our guys that wanted to go through it, and so I was in our training department and we hosted it. And I was like, well, if we're gonna host it, I might as well go through it. And I have major appreciation for people who do that because, they run us through some scenarios and stuff like that, and you're wanting to like strangle the person on the other end through the phone, but you have to realize in those real life situations, I mean, you do have to be careful in how you speak to people. And man, that was some invaluable training. I loved it.
Yeah, and I think it relates to every day in your life, right? With your family, friends, jobs, doesn't even matter the police department. Negotiations we do every single day in our life. That's why I think it's so beneficial. And you're right on the part of, you have one chance sometimes in a life and death situation. So you got to be very focused. It's all business at that point for me. Again, afterwards, you can have some humor and some talk with your teammates. But in that instance, it's very critical that you pay attention, listen to every word. For your listeners on a team, you would have the primary negotiator. That would be somebody like me that talks to the suspect in real time. You have a secondary negotiator. They listen in on my conversation and give me tidbits, either written notes, computer notes, saying, hey, you missed this, retouch on this. I have a intel negotiator that goes out and, Brent, anything we can find on you, job history, social media, medications, military service. I want to know everything about you. I joke with people, if you prefer Coke over Pepsi, I need to know that as a negotiator. And so we use all that to build that rapport, whether you love animals, things like that. We call it hooks and triggers. If you had a bad ex-girlfriend, I may not use that in the negotiation because that could be a trigger for you. But hooks might be that you love your dog a lot. So if you had a dog and told me about it, I would talk about your dog for 25 minutes. Nothing to do with the crime. That would build rapport between us. And then we move into the more serious items, whatever crime you committed.
Yeah, I like I said, my mind was blown after that class, and I was like, man, I have a ton of appreciation for the ones who do this on a full time basis. So much respect there. So tell me, Anchorage, like, what's the crime type? Like, what's your major crimes up there? I mean, do you have everything that the big cities in the mainland have, or is it just more localized to Alaska type crime? Like, how's that work up there?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's going to surprise your listeners. Is Anchorage is really no different than any other major city. In fact, it's probably a little bit worse. Our crime is very high per capita. So we have about 320,000 citizens, but a lot of crime. So murders are way up there. Domestic violence is way up there. Sexual assaults is way up there. And per capita, we have the most serial killers on planet Earth. So Alaska, although it's the most beautiful place on Earth, it's also one of the most deadliest. And again, that's population based. We don't have a massive population, but we have a lot of crime.
So, can you kind of touch on that, if you can? Alaska has the most serial killers per capita.
Yeah, there's a couple. We have some that I call it homegrown, where they're Alaska residents. They grew up in Alaska. They became serial killers. And then we have a lot that migrate into Alaska. And the psyche behind that, I don't really have a great answer. Although Alaska is kind of the home of the free, right? And we're very independent. You've got a large land mass, lots of territory. So I think it's a natural draw for serial killers to come up. Disposal of bodies. You've got a lot of land where you can put bodies in Alaska that people aren't around and never traverse. So I think that's part of it. Again, our crime rate is highly due to drinking and drugs. We have 8 months of long winter. So we have a heavy alcoholism rate in Alaska that contributes to domestic violence and other type of crimes. But it is quite unique why serial killers kind of flock to Alaska. I don't have a perfect answer for you.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's the last frontier. Maybe I don't know,
Yeah.
but so what is it like negotiating with a serial killer? I mean, that's got to be something most cops probably never experience. That's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, it's probably true. My last one was with a serial killer named Joshua Wade. He's probably good for up to 15 homicides. As you know, it's very difficult to solve all the homicides post conviction or without witnesses, especially in long spanning times. But I had a lot of interaction with this serial killer. The way he was arrested, he was wanted in Anchorage. There was a manhunt throughout Alaska for him for an additional murder that he did. He ended up fleeing from police, taking two hostages in an apartment complex, and that's where I come in. They call me out to negotiate one-on-one with this serial killer. So what I'll tell you is that the best thing you can do is to be honest. That sounds counterproductive, but serial killers know, just like any other criminals, whether you're bullshitting them or telling them the truth. So be very straightforward with them. This serial killer asked me, am I going to go to jail? If I answered no, we can work that out later, or maybe you won't, he would know that's not true. So what I told him, I softened it a bit. I said, Josh, we always use their first name. I said, Josh, you're going to have to pay for your crimes. That's dependent on the courts and what happens after this. So I didn't lie, but I definitely softened I'm not going to tell him you're going to go away for 135 years, which is exactly what he got in the sentence. So he was okay with that. We built trust. And then another thing I use particularly on serial killers or people that commit heinous crimes is they're very ego driven. So it feels wrong for you to boost their ego, while on the phone or in contact with these individuals, but you have to do it. So I separate, my morality at that moment and play upon their ego and really boost them up as this fantastic serial killer, the crimes they've done, go walk through with them. They really like that. It's kind of that, as a psychopath, that's what you relate to. And ultimately he released one hostage, eventually the second, and then we took him into custody. He was convicted and was serving time. He ended up overdosing in state prison in Indiana last June, I believe.
Wow. So tell me about the writing a book. I feel like that's a holy grail for a lot of law enforcement because we do see a lot of unique stuff throughout a career. But how did you decide I want to write a book, and how did you go down that route of writing the book? And tell us the title of it.
Yeah, I think most cops are naturally good writers. We write reports for a living, so you're writing these, especially if you're writing a homicide report. That's a extraordinarily detailed report. That's going to put somebody in prison for the rest of their lives or more. So I think naturally we're good writers. And then what happened with my book is I always wanted to write about my career post retirement. But there's a lot of true crime books, whether it's robberies, serial killers, all kinds of stuff out there that cops write or just true crime writers write. So I wanted something very different to come out of the chute and something that readers could read that's true crime, but much different. So the title of my book is 50 Shades of True Crime. And what that is, it's a play off 50 Shades of Gray. These are the most sexually deviant crimes that I worked in my career in Alaska over 25 years. So I took all of those and put them in a book. It's going to be a much different read than normal true crime. Like it's about 18 stories in the book, start to finish, from the cops' viewpoint. From the investigation to the court system to what happened to these individuals pre and post conviction. So it's really a different take. It's quite surprising of a read because it's going to lead you down different avenues of sexual deviancies, fetishes, in the extreme nature.
Yeah, I started reading a little bit of it today, and I was hooked. And I started laughing though because I was reading the titles, just in the in the glossary as I started, and I was just chuckling at every title because I was like, I could see that.
Yeah.
And so I started reading it today, and I like it so far. It's a really good book. I'm going to put a link in the show notes for everybody to check that out as well. But how long did the process take for you to write the book?
Boy, once I retired, I wrote the book in about 3 months. And again, these stories were ingrained in my memory. So not that it was easy to write the book, but when you live through each and every case, pretty easy, right? Uh, so getting the authorization from the police department, putting in some of the photos, things like that, took a little bit of time. And I will tell you what was the most difficult is when you go out to find a publisher, every author thinks that they'll come clamoring, everybody wants to publish your book. So I went through about 6 publishers. They love the book, but the book is pretty intense in the stories. And so they run up their chain of command. They'd come back. They would ask me to take some things out of the book. In fairness for the readers, I didn't want to do that. I wanted this book to be as real as possible, and that's what it is. So I declined that. Eventually, I found a publisher that loved the book, printed it as is, and we're off and running. Been very successful to date. I think readers enjoy it. I think kind of your comment that it's hard to put it down because you want to find out what happened in that story and go on to the next. And I kind of ramp it up. The first chapter is called Name That Crime. That's where the viewers can hear a set of facts, see a booking photo or a crime scene photo. Then I'll give you a couple Alaska criminal statutes. You can guess what that criminal did. And then you read the story, see how smart you were as an investigator, how far you were off, or if you got it right. So that's kind of an icebreaker for the book. And then we really ramp up into these extreme fetishes. But if you watch Netflix now, like The Monster and shows like that, that's really
Yeah, that genre is really exploding, and so I think you'll have a good audience for your book for sure. So, what's next? Is there going to be another book? What's next for you?
Yeah, there's certainly another book in the process, but with this book, which is kind of a little bit lucky, is I was contacted by a film company out of California that wants to kind of take this book and run with it, with to stream it, whether it's Netflix, Hulu, Discovery. That's in the process. So I'm currently under a contract with them to see if we can get this live streaming. So I'm kind of on hold till that either comes to fruition or runs out. I would certainly love to write another book, but it might be a TV docuseries before that.
That's pretty dang cool. How did that come about? Did they just read your book and say, "Hey, I want to
Yeah, the way it
talk to
came
you about
about,
this"?
I was actually on a podcast. The very first Code Red, and that's out of the East Coast, a couple of retired FBI agents. So I talked about stories. Of course, they asked in-depth, stories about this book and crimes I investigated. And the producer had actually listened to that podcast and contacted me through that. So it was the same form that we're on right now that ended up getting me into that process.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, are there any stories that you can share that you would be willing to tell my audience?
Yeah, the book is fascinating in its stories. One of the most interesting stories that I have in there is there's a whole chapter on tattooing, but this story it's called Kink and Ink. So you wouldn't think that law enforcement and tattoos clash or come into contact, but this was an interesting case. As a young rookie, I really wanted to stop the drug trade in Alaska, so I thought I could be a force and get out there and arrest people. There was a local dealer that I arrested for dealing heroin at the time, many, many, many years back. And I arrested him, was taking him to jail. On the police reports, it asked for tattoos. You kind of have to document people's tattoos. That's similar to fingerprints, DNA. Tattoos on individuals we use to identify. So we document all that. So he said he had a picture of a female on his back, but it asked for a description. So I said, is it your mom? Is it your girlfriend? Like, what's the female of? So he said it's a prison tat. At the time, I was pretty new, so I didn't quite know what a prison tat was. Long story short, for your listeners, he had done some time in San Quentin, which is a major prison in California, controlled by the Mexican mafia. Anything you can get on the outside of a prison, you can get on the inside of a prison. I know that seems like that's impossible, but trust me, in law enforcement, I learned that over 25 years. So what they did is he went to prison. He was addicted to heroin. The Mexican mafia grabbed a hold of him, provided him with heroin without any money. He couldn't pay it back, and he had two options. He could be a prison prostitute, or he could be killed. Obviously, he took the first option of being a prison prostitute. But in that, they tattooed one of the most remarkable tattoos I've ever seen in my life. It's in the book. That's why I call it the taboo tattoo. But it's extraordinary on how detailed this tattoo was on the back of this guy. And then they literally pimped him out for $20 to other prison inmates. And that's how he survived in prison. But he told me this story, and I was so shocked as a young cop because I didn't believe this could be our society. Now, fast forward 25 years later, and I believe anything after working in law enforcement. But at the time, it was a valuable lesson on the depths of humanity, how low you can go, especially with drugs. I didn't know what rock bottom was, but my God, that's got to be rock bottom.
Yeah, that's way down there for sure.
Yeah.
Um, you talk about some tips for protecting people like from everyday sexual predators. Can you share some tips with my audience? On how to keep them and their kids safe, like because there's a lot of evil in this world.
Yeah, I love giving these stories out and telling people because we all grew up. I had a family, I had kids. I would teach them the same thing. The best advice I can give is follow your gut. And the reason why I say that is 90% of the victims I interviewed, if they survived, they knew something was wrong. They sensed something beforehand. Some are random where you can't stop it. But in most cases, they knew they shouldn't have gone somewhere. They shouldn't have been alone. Let's take a parking garage late at night. So when your gut tells you that something's off, just follow it, right? If you see something in your neighborhood, there's no problem calling the police department and just reporting it. You don't have to call 911. You can report in the non-emergency number. We'll take that information and investigate it. It's not, we won't come knock on your door and say, what are you doing? We want that information. Again, I found when we interview neighbors, most of them knew something was happening. but they couldn't believe it or they thought it was too odd, so they didn't report it. And I was always like, if you would have reported it, perhaps we could stop the crime. So follow your gut. If you see something odd, report it to the police department. They'd love to hear it. As far as kids, again, babysitters, things like that, you really got to protect your kids. Unless you know the individuals, I wouldn't trust my kids in anybody's hands because it's so dangerous and there's so many predators out there. I don't want to, get your audience paranoid, but to the extent you can vet everybody that watches your kids, right? It's really important. And that way, do the best you can to protect them and have them follow their guts too, right? Go through the safety briefings with them about not getting into a car with a stranger. As odd as that seems, it happens. We can have the best kids in the world. They'll simply go, these predators will sometimes say, Mom and Dad sent me to pick you up. They're stuck at work. We got to go. And sadly, some kids get in those vehicles. So really work them through the scenarios because if it happens, it'll click with them, right? Not to get in that vehicle. So those are some of the points. But again, following your gut's the best advice I have.
Yeah, for sure. I truly think that in today's day and age, we have to be prepared. Um, first and foremost. So let me ask you this: You've been retired going on 4 years, roughly.
Yep, 4 years.
Do you miss the job?
Gosh, I miss it every day. It was I've done a lot of things in life, a lot of different jobs and things. It's the best job I've ever had. I don't want to say I would have done it for free, but there was never a morning where I woke up and I was like, man, I don't want to go to this job. It's overwhelming. I loved absolutely every minute of it. I think 25 years is a good contribution. Could have gone longer, but I think that's a good run. But I do miss it. I heavily support law enforcement. I would tell your listeners, if you see a cop out there, they're doing the job every day, working long hours and shift work. Thank them. It's very much appreciated. A lot of citizens told me that in my career, and it really meant something to me. So what you see on the internet and some of these clips is a small fraction of the police force. 99% of them do incredible work each and every day for the right reason. So I'm very pro law enforcement. I'm a little bit biased because I was in that career. But seriously, thank a cop if you see him out there.
Yeah, I can't agree anymore. Um, what are you doing to pass the time now? I mean, what's your hobbies now other than writing a book and hopefully getting a TV series off the ground? What are you doing to pass the time in retirement?
Yeah, I love being retired because it does free up the time. The wife and I love to travel, so we've done a ton of traveling. Alaska, there's a lot of sports that you can do, a lot of fishing in the summer. So instead of going for on your weekend, on your days off, you can go for a week or 10 days at a time, which are things that I love. So that's a real big benefit. What I do in the future, I'm not sure. Uh, I'm not hyper, but I like to be engaged in stuff all the time. So once the retirement thing's kind of quasi done, I think the book and the docuseries is fantastic for now, but who knows what's up in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. You ever decide you want to come to the great state of Oklahoma? Come down in May or June, and we'll go tornado chasing. I do that for fun, and we'll show you a little bit of Oklahoma.
Actually, I would love it. With those extreme weather things and tornadoes, Alaska has none, so they always fascinate me. We've got tons of earthquakes, but no tornadoes. You want to experience an earthquake? Come visit me.
You know what's funny is Oklahoma had a lot of fracking drilling in the mid 2000s, 2010 timeframe, and earthquake shot up here tremendously. And I'll never forget the first time I felt an earthquake, and I thought somebody was breaking in my house. I was sitting there playing Xbox in the dark, and my bed started shaking, and I thought somebody had broke into the house with my headset on. And I looked around, and there wasn't anybody there, and it was just the whole entertainment center sitting there shaking. I'm like, man, I think that's an earthquake. And of course, after that, social media blows up, and they're like, "That was an earthquake," because we just didn't get them. And now that they've kind of cut back on that a little bit, we had a good 5 year run of earthquakes, it seemed like, and now they've kind of cut back. But it was definitely an experience to experience my first earthquake because we don't get those very often.
Yeah, maybe that lands suddenly, which is good. I'll tell you what, you're afraid of what you don't have. So I'm not afraid of earthquakes, but I see a giant tornado coming to me, I'm gonna be pretty scared of that. So I think it's whatever you're used to. But I think they're cool to see. I want to make sure you're in a fast car so we can get away though if we're looking at it.
Absolutely, you let me know, and I will gladly take you up on that offer if you ever decide to make it down this way.
Cool. Yeah.
I tell people that they laugh at me. They're like, "Why do you want to do that?" It's honestly kind of peaceful and with so much chaos in front of you, and I don't know how to explain it, but I mean, I guess it's from being a cop. Like I see so much chaos in front of me all the time. It's kind of peaceful.
Yeah, no,
But
I'd be down. It sounds fun.
my buddy that goes with me normally, I always laugh at him because I got a limit. They start getting a little bit closer, and I'm like, hey, let's get out of here. But he's like a moth to a light, and he's just like sitting there going, I'm like, dude, we got to get out of here. It's time to go. And but it's a blast. It really is. And Oklahoma is such a unique state, geography wise, in that it is very similar to Oregon. And there's like 6 or 7 different biomes. We've got mountains, prairies, forests, you name it, we've got it. And it's just such a unique state from corner to corner. And it's beautiful down here. It really is.
Yeah, I
But
haven't visited, but I will. But same thing for Alaska for you and your listeners. Get up to Alaska, put that on your bucket list. It's absolutely gorgeous. May through September, a little bit more moderate temperatures. If you want to see the winter, come and see us. But most people, May through September is a cool time to come.
what's funny is I met a girl in college from Anchorage, and her family had moved to Oklahoma to come work in the oil industry. And she told me the same thing. She was like, listen, I know it's kind of way out of the way, but you get up there and you just fall in love with it. And she ended up moving back there after college, and she just tells me all the time, she's like, you need to come down here and visit. So it's on the bucket list for sure.
Cool, cool. You know, it's awesome. You won't regret it. Everybody that goes loves it, and the people are all nice, friendly. It's kind of an old school state. You know, that feeling, that vibe. So I love it.
So where can everybody get your book? And if they want to reach out to you, to have you guest on their podcast, or
Yeah.
make an appearance, something like that, where can they get a hold of you at?
Yeah, the book's available everywhere: Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, any bookstore where you might shop. It's on audiobook, ebook, paperback, hardcover. So whatever you like to do, the audiobook's pretty cool. I know a lot of the younger listeners love audiobooks, so check that out. The best way to go is go to my website, dougfifer.com. That's just Doug and then Fifer.com. And then you can watch the book trailer, see what you think of it, and then order the book. You won't be disappointed. So that's kind of the best way to get a hold of me. And there's an email on that website too. Anybody that email me is about the book, or book clubs that want me to show up on Zoom or in person in Alaska, I'm more than happy to. So it's been a pretty fun ride, and met a lot of different people. And you'd be surprised how deep true crime fans get into your book and how many questions they ask. But it's pretty fun.
That's awesome. All right, so I've been doing this new thing that I'm ending my podcast with. If today is the last day in the life of Doug Fifer, what is one piece of advice you'd give the next generation on making the world a better place?
Guys, that's a great question to end a podcast and ask. I would just go back to, you know, it seems so easy, but be kind to people, right? Like be a fellow human, a community member. Cops do it, citizens do it, but we've lost that a little bit in society, where we're bickering back and forth, and we're all pretty close in the same thoughts and processes. So just be kind, right? Be a kind person. That doesn't mean let people walk over you, but when somebody has an issue, help them, right? We've kind of lost it a little bit. So I would love the next generation to get out a little bit more, interact with humans, not so much on smartphones and laptops and TV 24 hours a day and games. I miss that, right? I think hopefully we can get back to that. But that's what I tell the next generation is get out there, interact. We're not that different. Be kind to people, and you do you, we'll do us, right? Nobody's got big issues with that, but we've got a little bit separated on that, which is unfortunate. Hopefully we meld that back in and get them on the right path.
I agree wholeheartedly. Doug, you are always welcome back. Good luck on the book, and let me know what's in the future. You're always, like I said, always welcome back. And thanks for joining me tonight.
All right, Brent. Thanks, man.